You're listening to Bigfoot Club Podcast, Cryptid Sports Entertainers for Life.
Hey everybody, Robert Jesse Dominguez, Bigfoot Club, Season 6, Episode 15. I'm here with my nephew, Steven. Steven, say what's up.
Episode 14.
Is it 14?
Yeah.
It's 14? Okay.
Yeah.
I just guessed it right.
You guessed it right.
I guessed it right, but I didn't do it right. Okay,
yeah.
So, Episode 14.
Mm-hmm.
How are you doing?
I'm doing all right. How about yourself?
Pretty good.
I haven't seen you in a while, man. How you been?
Whatever.
Okay, yeah, I forget. We live in the same house, yes, I forgot.
So,
no, I'm doing good. How about yourself?
I'm okay. I'm okay. Work's going good, and
It's good.
so I'm pretty excited today.
Mm-hmm.
Today in our Bigfoot Club is Linda Eastburn. Linda, hello. Thank you for coming on to the club.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
You interviewed me like two months ago, a month ago?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah. I really enjoyed doing that one. That was a good one, and I really like your YouTube channel, and you've been doing it for how long now?
Oh, just about a year and a half. Got real busy that first year, got about 300 videos up. It's close to 360 now, I think.
Wow. So, you got, I've been doing the show since 2019, and I think I only have like 100. So you churn out some stuff pretty good, and you really knock it down. I'm really, really impressed.
Yeah, I really hit the ground running when it kind of took off with my first show, Bigfoot the Lane Witch with Scott Nelson. I was just real impressed, and I just got a large cryptid Bigfoot following, and so I just found a lot of people to talk to about it.
So let me just ask this real quick. You didn't start off this channel doing Bigfoot stuff, right? What, you were doing other stuff?
I was doing, no, I was not doing Bigfoot stuff. What happened was I was doing Intuitive Journeys, which was a show that really didn't take off much. And I wasn't real familiar with YouTube, and I wasn't really keen on YouTube. So I was doing this Intuitive Journeys. It wasn't going very, very well. And then someone mentioned Bigfoot, which took me in the direction of Scott Nelson. Mm-hmm. He was here local. At a conference, actually. So I met him there and got an interview with him. Went up close to Kansas City where he lives and did 6 hours of filming. And from there, we got 2 hours, edited it down to 2 hours, released that, and it just took off. I mean, people just really liked that show. So then suddenly I had all of these Bigfoot followers, and, I didn't know a lot about Bigfoot at the time. Mm-hmm. So I had to, I just had to find anyone and everyone that I could to be on the show, because I didn't know these people. I didn't know if they were well known or if they were like credible. I didn't know anything about them. But as it turned out, I met a lot of really great people, got some really good interviews, and people just continued to like the channel. So I just kept up the Bigfoot stuff. I was
scrolling through and there's a lot of people here I don't know, and I would like to know, mm-hmm. because I kind of mimic what you're doing. I don't try to get the most well-known people. I try to get good people and bring them to the light. But I noticed that you have like Steve Coles, Doug Hychak, MK Davis, Lauren Smith, she's been on our show before. And, but I really, really like what you're doing. You find stories and you just talk about them. And I find that fascinating. I really, really like that aspect of your show. So
I think a lot of people do. I think they just like to hear a good story. And, these people have had an experience, or most of them. If they haven't seen a Bigfoot, they've had some form of an experience, or they're out in the woods researching them, mm-hmm. usually. Or they're like you have a show and they've talked to a lot of people, so they've heard a lot of experiences. So I think people just really enjoy that firsthand thing,
mm-hmm.
And then, of course, we did the film Byways of Bigfoot during all of that busy time. I was filming the show Byways of Bigfoot along the Niagara River, and that was out in the field, doing that. So that was an interesting thing to do as well. It was my first adventure out like that, mm-hmm. doing something Bigfoot related, but we found some evidence, so that was nice.
So that was leading into my next question is how much field work, or have you seen a Bigfoot at all, or have you experienced it? I
have not seen a Bigfoot. No.
I haven't either. So I've experienced lots of things in the woods. Which I'm sure you recall in our interview. I've heard like knocks and screams and yells and whistles and hoops and all kinds of stuff, but I've yet to see one. But it's still at the same time, it's very intriguing to be in the field and.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. That's I didn't know exactly what I was doing in doing the film, so I didn't expect to find anything. We went to a person's property that had heard vocals, but he only heard them generally in the fall and spring. So we started in the kind of late summer filming, and filmed right up to about the first of the year. But I really didn't know, if we'd find anything. But, our first day out, we found stuff. And then we went to another location and we found some things. I was just amazed at what we were finding. Mm-hmm. And it was pretty definitive. I mean, the prints were not good enough to make cast, but you could see the toe prints. I mean, it was obviously a foot. It was a toe print. Mm-hmm. It was in hard to get to areas. It wasn't the time of year that you would normally have people out there barefoot, along these banks of a cliff. It just wasn't typical, of that. And then the other one we saw a tree limb down, went deep into the woods where this was, and there was a footprint right there as well. And this was real close to another area where there were scratch marks about 9 feet up on another tree. So, all of those things just kind of came about, and those weren't actually on this private property. Mm-hmm. By the time we got to the private property, we were finding trackways and a lot of really strange things. And just today I found out we had put some things out there with shiny stuff in a jar, and the jar would be really difficult to get the lid open because it was a big round top to it. It would take quite a bit of work to get that off. And I just found out today, we put those out probably in October, November last year, and I just found out that something opened that jar and got those little blue glass things. So nice. That was kind of fun. So wow. I think there's more activity on that property than even when we were filming.
Wow. Steven, you got anything?
No, I wonder what opened that jar.
Yeah, well, I think early in the field, the late 90s, early 2000s, we were experimenting with stuff like that. We would put CDs like hanging from trees, and we used to put whatever that was indigenous in the area. If there was cantaloupe
CDs, what the disc?
Yeah, the CD disc. Yeah, because it was shiny. Yeah, and so we would hang it from trees, and then we would put whatever that was indigenous in the area. Like say for example, someone was growing corn or cantaloupe, we would stick it in crooks of trees and stuff. Now,
I want to throw this out there because I don't know. I don't think you've ever mentioned this or I've ever heard of this. Mm-hmm. What if you were to put a mirror out there?
I think we did.
Really?
We took a 6-foot mirror out and we put it out. We leaned it against a tree that supposedly. I don't know how we came to this conclusion, Linda. But there was this one tree we felt that Bigfoot was peeing on it. Mm-hmm. And I don't know how we got to that conclusion. So we leaned a 6-foot mirror on it, and then when we went back to go check on it, it was knocked over or something.
Yeah.
So it makes me wonder how because I don't think they've ever seen unless it's water, maybe.
Yeah.
Seeing the reflection, but seeing an actual mirror. I wonder what that does. Does it scare them? Does it I don't want to look at myself
they think it's another Bigfoot.
Yeah,
it's encroaching on their territory.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it makes me wonder if that's if they think it's a camera or if they think it's that's weird. Can raccoons open up jars though? Because they got hands, so it makes me wonder.
I don't know if they can do it that tight.
This was 6 inches across the top. The lid was so this would have been really big for. So it would have taken a pretty big palm to get this open. I think
that's always good because I'm sure you guys thought of that. Let's make sure it's a big hand could get it off. And
right.
Stuff, so
I'm not a raccoon.
Well.
Right.
So I was skimming through a little part of your book, and I did see a part in there where you're hopefully I'm not saying it wrong. You're a licensed hypnotherapist.
I do hypnosis. I used to do it a lot. Back in the early 90s, I got started doing hypnosis, and I was teaching hypnosis at that time, and I got invested in a MUFON group that was researching UFOs. So I've been researching UFOs since the early 90s. So that's something that led into my actually writing the book, because I could see so much correlation between people who had experiences with Bigfoot and people who had experiences with UFOs. But yeah, I joined this group, and it was kind of the heyday of doing regressions with people who feared they had maybe been abducted by aliens. It was the Bud Hopkins era, if you know any of his work or not, but he wrote a lot of books from the perspective of the person that had gone under hypnosis and remembered things. So because I was working in the field as well, the conductor of the meetings, the MUFON meetings, he was also a licensed therapist, and he was doing hypnosis with people, but there was a lot of overflow from that. So he would send those people to me. So I got to have some really cool firsthand experiences with individuals that had possibly had some kind of a UFO abduction. And most of the time they just had a memory, just a slight memory, maybe a blue light coming through a wall in the house, or the room lights up, or they get up to get a drink of water, look outside, and there's a craft on the ground out in their yard. Things like that they just had these like vague memories of. And of course that takes them into, wow, I wonder if more happened and I just don't remember it. So we would explore those memories.
What, without giving out any people's like information, what was the wildest one that you experienced?
There was one person who just became absolutely hysterical. There was a procedure. One of the aliens had a long needle, and they were going to put it in her abdomen, and she just went berserk under hypnosis.
Poor baby.
And she did not want to see the little beings. The little alien beings were bad enough, but then they were coming at her with this needle, and she just really couldn't handle that. So it took a long time to get her calmed down back into being able to actually perceive what was happening around her, distancing her from that experience. But then as it went on, it was interesting because they showed her these various locations, and it was like they gave her this mission that she felt like she would be doing in the future. And that was these craft were in these parking lots, and she was to help people, directing people to get on board the craft, and they were going to take them off Earth,
off world.
So that was just really kind of weird, but it was like she had a mission.
That's scary. That's kind of scary.
Yeah, it is scary.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
I've read somewhere, and I'm just paraphrasing here, that I've read rumors that whenever there's stories like that of a person experiencing or going through hypnotherapists, and whenever they talk about a big needle, that the aliens are potentially harvesting embryos.
And that could be that could have been a possibility. She didn't see that per se, but I've definitely run into those.
Wow.
Are these the grays?
These are the little grays, like the cover of the book Communion, written by Whitley Strieber. They look a lot like that most of the time. I mean, there are others too. There's reptilians and various other creatures, but most of the ones that I've heard about are worked with the people that just saw the little grays. Now, there was a really wild reptilian story, however, that came my way, and this was by 3 different people, and none of them knew one another. And it wasn't like an abduction thing or anything like that. It was just a weird story. There was a friend of mine, and she just happened to be a nurse, and she knew that I was into UFO stuff. So she started telling me about this strange experience that happened to her once. She was in a room working with a patient, and this woman suddenly turned into this like reptilian in front of her, and it startled her. She ran back against the wall, she just didn't know exactly what to do. And finally she calmed down. The woman turned back into herself, and it was just kind of this flash of an insight of seeing her that way. And then within a week or so, another nurse was talking to me. I didn't mention this to her. It wasn't like I was talking about reptilians all the time.
Right.
But she started telling me about a very similar experience. She was in a room with a woman. she turns into a reptilian. And this nurse had to run out of the room into the hall because she just couldn't be in that room. She just couldn't. And then a doctor walks by and asks what's wrong, and she had to pretend like everything was fine. And eventually someone came along that went back in the room with her, and the woman had turned back into herself. She was no longer a reptilian. But this was really weird. All of these stories happened within a short span of time, but there was a fellow UFO researcher woman that I knew that was telling me a story about her daughter. Her daughter was, 12, 13, something like that. And they lived in town, and there was a house behind their house, of course, fence dividing the two properties. But there was a man that would come out on their deck and just sit there. And her daughter kept saying, Mom, that guy turns into a reptilian. I see him turning into this reptilian. Well, he's a really nice man. They knew the family, and so her mom just kind of blew that off. It's like, okay, that's fine. And then this woman came to her house. Remember, she was also a researcher, a UFO researcher. So one day she had a woman come to her house that was going to relate a story to her that she was very upset about. And she came in, she sat down, and she started telling her that she'd gone to a doctor's office. And the doctor was examining her, and while the doctor was examining her, suddenly he turns into a reptilian in front of her face. And it's like, what are the odds of all of this? But the weird thing was, this is the really weird thing, that same man that was the lady's doctor was the same neighbor behind the house that her daughter had been seen turn into a reptilian.
Wow.
Wow. Like, wild or what? So that's the end of my reptilian stories, but they all came in 1 week from 3 separate people that did not know one another, and I didn't even mention the word reptilian to any of them. So that was individually, they just showed up at my doorstep somehow.
Talk about synchronicity.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
It's finest.
Yeah.
So are reptilians bad?
Are they aggressive, do you think?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't have anything against the reptilians. I mean, you hear everything, and mostly it depends on the perspective of the person that's having the experience. Some people experience bad things with aliens. Some people experience just neutral things. Some people experience bad stuff. So some people experience, just very pleasant, learning experiences, like they're in a classroom or something. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. I mean, when you think of a reptile, sometimes, that just gives it a bad reputation just based on it being a reptile.
I wonder. Yeah. I almost wonder if these people have some kind of special ability, or their frequency is a little bit higher than a normal person, and whenever they meet one of these potential creatures, that they can somehow clash and just like for a second see them. I don't know, but that's very interesting. Wow.
And it makes me wonder if these people that experience this, they all have something in common we're just not looking at, like maybe underlining thing or something. Yeah, maybe they I don't know, I'm going to use this as for example, they flatlined and they came back, right. Or they, I don't know, cancer runs in their family. I don't know. It's like
potentially got hit by lightning or
something like that. Or wow. I don't know. It just makes me wonder if they have a connection that we're not looking at that allows them not just for seeing UFOs or reptilians, but everything else, paranormal,
seeing a Bigfoot,
seeing a Bigfoot, UFO. Yeah, seeing Lechuza or something like that.
Wow,
it just makes me wonder if that's even a thing that no one's ever paid attention on.
Wow, that's food for thought.
It's like just a little input on that, just from my research. It's been about 30 years of talking to so many people. I do notice that it runs in families. The people who see UFOs, the people who are abducted by aliens, it seems to run in families. Sometimes that's true with Bigfoot too, but sometimes it's just because the family unit itself all goes out and researches Bigfoot, so that's difficult to say. But it seems like when they can see one, they tend to be able to see them all, the various cryptids and stuff. So I think you're onto something. I do think there's something about the person that's observing this that has some ability to see maybe more than like I would see. I used to have a research group myself, and we traveled to all over the country to research sites, talking to people and looking at places and looking for UFOs. And, I have only had one experience in my entire life with any of these creatures. So it isn't from lack of trying. It isn't from lack of being out there. Right. It's just a matter of I just don't see much. So
I'm starting to think, Linda, that these creatures and these entities are afraid of you. They just avoid you at all costs.
Because it just.
They know I'll film them.
Yeah.
Put them in a show.
She's going to interview us. Let's go.
She's on to us.
I gotta get them on my show. Right?
It just makes me wonder. Like we're going back to the people that.
Yeah.
When the eyes, I feel like the eyes are like very powerful portals, you know, into the mind. Mm-hmm. So whenever you just happen to see a ghost, it imprints in your eyes and it goes somewhere in your brain where it's like no one's ever researched that it unlocks something, and it just trickles to everything else, and then your eyes like okay, you've seen that once, now you're gonna see this because you've opened a doorway unknowingly, and that right there is scary, you know.
I know we've talked about this on our show multiple times about, you know, if you see a Bigfoot, you potentially could see a UFO or maybe a ghost, or you just have different energy that either it's like for a ghost or a Bigfoot or a UFO, it's like a Roman candle going off, and they want to go see what this is, and for some reason you're attracted, you're like magnetism for them, and I don't know why. You know, it's like the veil is thinning around that particular person or you or whatever. So yeah, I totally agree with you on that, Linda. Is that whenever something like that happens, you know, it's just it's just
you're marked.
Because like we whenever we interview people, we kind of ask that question. I say, hey, have you had a paranormal experience? Have you seen a UFO? You know, we always ask that question all the time because 9 times out of 10 they say, well, actually I have. So
yeah. And it's
same here.
Creepy.
Exactly the same thing here. You know, I ask everyone. And it's usually straight across the board. Most of them have seen a craft or at least unusual lights phenomena, and you know, and they've had ghosts or paranormal experiences. Yeah, it's across the board. So,
since we're on that subject right now, have you had any paranormal experience, or do you do a lot of paranormal experiences, like in the field at all?
I have researched paranormal things, but mostly a lot of psychic things, especially. But I've only had one ghost experience myself on a personal level, and this was something I felt behind me. It was a house I lived in the corner of the room, and I was sitting with my back to that corner in the floor of the living room, and I started feeling something kind of uncomfortable behind me. And there was a friend of mine was sitting across from me on a sofa. And she could see energy. I can't see energy, but she could see energy. She didn't say anything, but I started feeling kind of uncomfortable with something. I didn't know why. Now, this was odd because I don't normally feel things like that. So I finally got up and said, I don't know what's going on, but I just don't want to sit there anymore. And she said, well, she could see some movement back there, some energy movement in that corner. Now, this was really strange. You know, synchronicity seems to be my thing. It's like if I ask a question, somewhere it's going to get delivered to me. It's just the way it is. So I didn't really ask the question, but it was still, I was pondering in my mind, well, I wonder what that was. And I had a hypnosis appointment that day. This was way back before I started doing a lot of the other things I eventually did. But this man came for a session with hypnosis, and he was acting really strange. You know, I would normally start in that living room, and we would just do the interview process there. And then we would progress back to my office to actually do the hypnosis. So he came in, and he was just acting strange. I mean, he wasn't saying much. He didn't go in the living room when I prompted him to. He walked into my family room. He looked out the sliding glass doors in the back of the room. Then he came back to the entrance hall, and he's standing there with his arms crossed. And I'm thinking, you know, should I run now? Because he was just behaving really strange. But no, and then he said, I think my dad used to live in this house. I thought, well, you know, I understand then why you were, you know, looking around to maybe see if this was actually your father's home. And then he looked in that very corner that I felt that uncomfortable energy. He pointed to it and he said, and he died right there.
Oh my God.
You're gotta be kidding me. Because it had only been like a couple of weeks since I had felt the energy there. And this girl had seen that movement back there. So I think, wow, that's confirmation.
Wow.
So that's my only ghost experience.
I got chills too, just thinking about it. Oh man. Because like most people, Linda, they're not gonna say what they feel and blurt it out loud. I'm glad he did.
Yeah.
And
me too.
that way it could, like, you know, solidify your experience, what you were experiencing at the time. Man, that's great. A lot of people don't get that though. A lot of people don't get validation like that, and that's amazing.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and then we went to a small town that has a lot of ghost activity, and then we spent a full day researching some houses that had bizarre poltergeist experiences. This one, there was a couple, and I mean, they just had story after story after story since they moved into this large 2-story older home. They came home from a party one night, and she had a really nice party dress on, and she didn't want to get it all wrinkled or anything, so she took it off and just gently laid it over the sofa, the back of the sofa, for safety's sake, before going to bed that night. And the next day she gets up, and where is her dress? It's wadded up in the freezer in the kitchen. It's like, you've got to be kidding me. I mean, that was just the kind of stuff that was happening there. But they had this weird old statue thing. It was a wooden carved statue. It was very antique, very old. Didn't come from this country. That's how old it was. It was in the living room. It was about 4 feet tall, I would say. It was big around too, being carved out of a large, wood piece. So they said it all kind of started when they got that, and it all sort of revolved around that really weird piece of furniture. And it was kind of strange because another person I know who lives back east, she also has a statue thing that's not from this country. It's very old, very antique. Looks somewhat like this one, not exactly, but it looks somewhat like this. And she also has these really bizarre poltergeist-like activities in her home. Now, I can't say that causes it, but I did observe that they both have those in their houses.
So it was a big wooden statue?
Yeah, it was about 4 feet tall, bigger around than tall. I mean, not bigger around, but but fairly large. Probably a diameter of a fairly good sized tree.
Wow. So I'm
and carved.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
It was carved to look like a person. It wasn't real super distinct as a person because it was too bulky and big around, but it had features of like an entity or a person.
Wow. I've heard many stories about, because I'm assuming this is some kind of, what's the word I'm looking for, Stephen? It's where a ghost is attached to attachment. Yeah. So I had a story similar to that one, Linda. I had one where some Army guy from a base here in Texas reached out to me via the phone, and he had just made it back from Iraq, and he had purchased like a wooden chest there. And once he brought it back to America, and he was back in his barracks, he was experiencing this entity that was like a shadow person, and it was telling him, one of the occasions it said, "We are many." It told him that. And he freaked out and he left. And, I was trying to get out there to go help him, but he was on base. And eventually he just quit calling me. I kept trying to call him back, and because we were trying to figure out what was going on at the barracks and what had experienced there. There was any history.
That's the scary part. Is that he just stopped responding.
He stopped responding, and I wasn't. We kind of figured. I said, "Did you bring anything back from Iraq?" I go, "Stone, metal, wood, anything, rocks." And he goes, I brought back a wooden chest. I bought a wooden chest for some dealer. And I said, "Oh, okay." So to me, that sounds like some kind of a attachment to that, potentially to that. So.
Yeah, it very well may be. And, I don't know where they got those. I don't know how they came into possessing those statues, but definitely. But I also knew a woman who lived in the Middle East, and she said when they were there, they lived there over 10 years working, but they were U.S. citizens, but they lived in the Middle East working. And she said just really, really strange things happen over there. Yeah. It's not like here, that there was just so much bizarre stuff happening there. Not only did she experience it, but she had 2 young sons, and later on they accidentally told her because they weren't supposed to tell her. They said that after they moved back to the States, the youngest one kind of let the cat out the bag that the 2 oldest ones, or the 2 boys, the older one had more information than the young one because he was still pretty young. But at night, they both felt like they were going up the stair to stairway to a door and going outside, and they were taken to play with other kids. And now that's just really strange because there was no door at the top of their stairs that went outside. So, but both of them remembered it very distinctly, and so where were they going? What were they doing? Why did they both remember it so vividly? I don't know.
I'm thinking astroplane.
Yeah,
like
probably so.
Maybe they had an out of body experience, and maybe they thought they were awake, and that's what I think they go. So,
I think any type of paranormal foreign is like 10 times more powerful to me.
Yeah,
I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's the water over there or the just the land.
They got way more. Because the Americas is a baby compared to Asia and Europe. They've had history there for thousands and thousands and thousands of years.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't doubt that. But anyway, that could be a whole nother podcast.
But they also saw UFOs. I don't remember her ever saying they saw Bigfoot, but she did have a dogman experience one night. Now this was not your typical in the woods dogman experience, though,
right?
But it was one of those. She's asleep at night. She's laying beside her husband, who's also asleep. When suddenly she feels this thing pounce on her, and she looks up, and it's this wolf-looking, dogman creature on top of her, and she felt like it was choking her. And then somehow she kind of got it off of her. He ran over top of her husband. He felt it too. And the last thing she saw, this thing was running toward the doorway and then disappeared. That was just kind of a weird thing.
Yeah.
Have you had many dogman stuff?
I have had a few people talk about Dogman. Mostly it's out in the woods, where they have an experience with Dogman very similar to experience with Bigfoot. Sometimes it is different than Bigfoot. In that they're usually a little more ferocious. And then this one that I did, he felt like he was kind of in an altered state. He felt like they were when they saw this Dogman, because it just disappeared after a point, but it scared the living daylights out of him before it disappeared, because they really thought that he was with some other boys, and they all thought they were going to be eaten alive. That's what they honestly thought. This was their death. And then, that eventually something happened. Dogman got scared, ran off, and disappeared, and they didn't see it anymore. But they were absolutely terrified. And when they got back home, they didn't want to tell anyone because they were afraid no one would believe them. Some of them had PTSD from this. I mean, it was a really psychologically frightening experience they both had, or they all had. There were 4 of them, I think. So, yeah, that one was kind of weird, but it also made me question, well, what state of mind are we in when we see these? You don't know if you're looking flat out flesh and blood something, or if it's something like the lady who had the wolf attack her in the middle of the night, and she could feel it, he could feel it, but then it just disappears, and how did he get in the bedroom, and how did he get out of the bedroom? All those questions.
Yeah, most of the stories, I mean, I don't get a lot of stories about dogmen, but whenever I do read them and I do talk, I want to talk about them, for their description, you would think you would find more people either mutilated or cattle mutilated with this creature. And I can't remember. Please forgive me. I can't think of the author, the one that did the Beast of Bray Road. I can't think of her name right now. Her name escapes me, but I remember reading her book, and she was saying that she had thought that it was like Native American. Like most of the wolf, the dogman sightings were on areas that were originally like owned by had Native American people, and this dogman was potentially protecting their crops or whatever crops that used to be in that area. And
Linda Godfrey,
that's right. Okay. So I feel bad for not remembering her name. I feel so, but anyway, but I remember reading in her book, she had thought that that most of these dogmen were supernatural entities that were still trying to protect an area that no longer existed, like crops for a Native American group, or like a water source, or hunting grounds or something like that. They had this this animal protecting them from this area. So I don't know. I because like you hear a lot of stories, but you don't hear a lot of stories of like these ferocious creatures not killing anybody, right?
True. Well, LBL. I mean,
Right.
down there's that rumored story of the campers getting killed. And there's in this one case that I'm working on right now. It's actually an area. It's about a 10-mile radius area, and there is a wooded area, large wooded area that is kind of a haunted type. It has a reputation of being haunted. A lot of strange things happen in there. But it started out with a man being no one really knows what happened to him. The only thing that was left of him was his hand in the car. And that was in the 1930s or so.
Wow.
And ever since then, the woods have seemingly been haunted, or maybe it just got that reputation. I can't find any record of this man as far as, legal records or anything like that, or police reports or anything like that. So it could be just an urban legend. I have to preface it with that. But nonetheless, since then, a lot of people have had just strange things happen in this wooded area.
Wow. That's like, that could be another podcast too. So, Linda, I want to get into Threshold to Encounters. So
yes, Threshold to Encounters. Actually, that story is in Threshold to Encounters.
Yes.
In a brief way. Yeah.
Okay. I can't wait to read that part. I'm just trying to think what made you want to write this type of book out?
Well, I had been doing UFO research for 30 years. And as so I had a lot of experience under my belt. Lots of on ground, looking for evidence with Bigfoot sightings, and not Bigfoot sightings, but UFO sightings, interviewing people, doing hypnosis with individuals, took people all over the country, looking up UFO experiencers and talking with them and getting details. So I had all of this under my belt, and then I come into this Bigfoot videos, and that was only, my first one went out in 2023, January, I think, 23, not that long ago.
Wow.
But as I did all of those interviews with those Bigfoot people, I'm thinking, gosh, there's just a lot of correlation here in the things I've heard for years in the UFO community, and now I'm hearing it in the Bigfoot community. So I had to look at that, and I thought, and I was talking to people when I would interview people. Oftentimes, they had noticed that too. There were some correlations here, and we couldn't really pin it down. So I finally decided to just go ahead and put the book together, to put a lot of these experiences in the book, but also a lot of theories and ideas of possibly what we might be dealing with.
Sorry. My Dell's trying to update, so sorry. This is not your first book, correct?
No, I have 2 other books, but they're not on the same subject matter at all.
Right.
I'm a remote viewer and an intuitive, so they're more on the psychic realm. The other 2 books. The first one's called Riding the Intuitive Wave. It's a real intro into my early years of starting to do this. My second one is called With Heart: How Compassion opens us up to the universe, and we're able to get a lot more things when we use more of our heart space in doing that. That's not just me saying that. That was something that the Tibetan monks found, that whenever they got to a place in their heart of compassion in their meditations, it just kind of opened up, and all of this psychic information was present to them. So there's something in the physical body that's not just about the mind, the brain receiving information. It was also about the kind of a whole body thing.
Wow. Steven, you got any questions about the book?
No, I was just actually reading on chapter 28 how you talked about if time could be like your everything on everybody's lives is based on time, but can it be manipulated? Do you think that that's like a thing? And if we were able to find out that, like you said it right here, and I thought this was a good the way you described it. When a trip that should take several hours is completed in 20 minutes, something is amiss. Likewise, when a trip to the kitchen to grab a bottle of water takes 5 hours, something is wrong. Like that's like hitting it right in the nail, as like with perfectly described on that. Yeah, because if I go to the kitchen right here, it shouldn't take me not even 5 minutes to get a cup of water and then come back. But if if you're in here and you're like, I don't know why you're in here 5 hours, and you're like, you know what, Steven left like a couple hours ago to get what happened, and I'm still in the kitchen struggling to get water or something. I don't know.
Something's wrong.
Yeah, something's wrong.
These are actually reports that I've taken, actually, where people, there'd be a husband and wife, and the husband got up and went to the bathroom, and when he comes back, she says, what took you so long? Where have you been? She knew he wasn't in the bathroom 5 hours. And he said, what do you mean? I just went to the bathroom, came right back, and in his mind, he had been nowhere, but she was there sitting, watching movie after movie, and he still wasn't back and had no idea where he was. So, yeah, kind of that missing time idea. And another story that I researched was a woman who she'd had some kind of unusual experiences, but wasn't, nothing major. And she had 3 sons. She worked nights, her husband worked days, and her oldest son was about 15. So he got the 2 younger ones up and ready for school and got them on the bus and all that good stuff, in the mornings, well, so she could sleep in a little bit because she worked late at night. So this one day she gets up, she's sitting on the sofa, she flips on, some news show on TV, and her dog's sitting there with her. She's drinking a coffee, trying to get awake. It's about 10 in the morning. And all of a sudden, her dog starts shaking really bad. And she looks down at him, and, it's like fear, fear came over him. And then she looked up, and in this doorway, she saw this weird little alien peering from behind the doorway. And she starts shaking like the dog. She doesn't know for sure what to do. So she screams, grabs her phone, grabs the dog, runs outside because she wasn't staying in there, and calls her mom. Her mom and her brother come over. Her brother has a gun, like as if that's going to help anything, right? With this alien. But anyway, they didn't know for sure what it was. So she and her mother stay outside. He goes in. He searches the entire house, seeing if there's anything in there that shouldn't be there, any person in there maybe, and whatever it is. And nothing. He finds absolutely nothing. So he comes back outside, and he said, he didn't find anything, but he asked her, did you know your youngest son is in there in bed asleep? And she said, no, he's not. He's not in there asleep. But he was. So then she's really, really mad at the oldest son because he was supposed to get him up and get him off to school, that morning. Mm-hmm. And so she waits until the other 2 kids get home from school, and then she mentions it to him because she's not a happy camper with that oldest boy. And he said, Mom, I looked everywhere this morning, and that little boy, he wasn't home. He wasn't in bed. He wasn't in any room of the house. He was nowhere to be found. And he just thought he had probably stayed over with his uncle, because sometimes the kids would stay, with their relatives and such. But no. So speculate maybe that thing that she saw peering around the doorway might have been bringing the little boy back or something. We don't know.
Wow.
That makes me mad. I would have been, because I'm a parent, and the thought of something, taking your kid, or even thinking that, oh Lord, that would, I would have kicked that little alien. I don't care. I don't need a gun. I don't know. That's just, oh my God. And the idea of the dog trembling and fear, like there's
usually a like a guide or a sign.
Yeah. And it makes me want to get a dog, and it kind of doesn't want me to get a dog, because you get that, and you have to pay attention to that, because they have senses that we do not have.
Yeah.
And it just makes me wonder, like, did the dog see the thing, or did it just know?
Yeah.
So weird.
Linda, Steven's got 2. We have 2 7-year-old boys, twins that are here, and whenever they were really little, Steven was living in an apartment, and we had a baby cam on them, and sometimes we would see lots of orbs in there, and we would go in there to thinking that they were like bugs or like flies, and they weren't, and so we were really concerned, and we would pull out K2 meters, and while they were asleep, we were like scan the room and stuff, so to see if there was any kind of, because like apartments are really, really tough when it comes to paranormal stuff. Yeah. Because I always call it transitioning when a ghost, when someone dies in an apartment, and they can transition through the whole property without, almost at ease. And so it's always tough to do like some kind of investigation inside of an apartment. So that's what we were kind of thinking. that that these entities were transitioning through the walls and possibly to the boys, and they were attracted to the boys for some reason. But yeah, he gets really concerned when we.
Do you remember the incident with the cam though?
Yeah.
Where you weren't living with us.
No,
you were at Lackey Court, I think.
Yeah.
Still, this is before you got sick, and they were in their room about to go to bed, and I'm sitting at our bedrooms are real close, so I'm sitting at the edge of the bed taking off my shoes, and I can hear them talking, but it's not loud. And then I hear like the camera, like something screaming,
like a screech,
no, it was a scream, like it was like an actual scream, and I thought it was the boys, and then they came out running before I can get, and we're real close, and I got up really quick. And they were screaming, they were crying. They were saying,
like, what, about 4 or 5?
I think they were about 5 at that time, 5 or 6. No, I think it was 5. I think they were 5 years old. And they were screaming and crying because there's something on the camera. Like, they're just screaming. And I heard it, too. And Blair was all like, I didn't hear anything. She was right next to me.
Yeah. I think I had just, like, right before that happened, I had zoomed in on my phone on the app. And I saw them reacting. And then we were talking to each other, right?
Yeah, because right whenever that happened, you called me real quick. And you said, hey, is everything okay? I go, were you just on the camera? Or did you say something? And you were like, no, I just happened to look and see them scream. And I wanted to make sure everything was okay. I go, no, and something like, and I was like freaking out. Like, I was like, did someone hack the camera? Did they see something or hear? I don't know what it was, but it took a lot of convincing for them to get back into bed.
Yeah.
And they were fine. Like, I go, it's fine, blah, blah, blah. I'll even unplug it. But I have, went back in and plugged it back in because I wanted to keep an eye on them.
Yeah, keep an eye on them.
But yeah, there was a lot of stuff like that. There was like that. And then there was like a nightmare I had where there was a demon in their room and it was hiding under one of their beds.
Yeah.
And I
remember that story.
And I grabbed it and something was telling me just throw it out the window.
If it was that easy.
Yeah. And I grabbed it and I threw it out the window and it like was screaming. It was weird. Those little,
those stories like that, Linda, it really gets to us. And we don't like kids that, get involved in stuff like that.
Yeah. So. No, it gets me mad.
There was one case I researched, that this woman had a young child, probably 6 or 7, something like that. And she opened, it was night, it was dark outside. She opened his bedroom door and the entire room was just lit up like daylight. And, she didn't know what to do with that. I mean, that was terrifying to her. Her child was okay, was in the bed, asleep, everything was fine. But, when things like that happen, you just don't know what it is. This is not normal for our world. But those incidences happen actually more often than you realize. It's not that uncommon among people who have these experiences. They just have a lot of this unusual light phenomena that occurs.
Yeah, that takes a lot of power to do that. So,
and it just makes me wonder, why the kids, are they emitting so much energy that it involves that, or they're drawn to it?
Their innocence.
Their innocence. Like, it just depends on the entity too. Like, is it malice? Is it or is it just a curious, and I always think too, is it an old passed on relative, coming in to check up on, the child or stuff like that? That I don't mind, but when it's something that's like, doing it for malicious intent, like, it just gets me mad.
Linda, I'm pretty excited about reading your book, and because I feel for some reason that I don't know you that well, and I did that interview with you, but I feel like for some reason or our thoughts and stuff mimic each other, and I always seem to gravitate toward people like that, and there's something about you. I don't know. It's just I don't know. I'm just really excited for this book for you. And whenever you started writing this book, did you I mean, not that it's like a story and you're writing a story, did you ever come across where you have a writer's block and you say, man, what story how do I transition this story to this story, or how do I go about doing it? Did you ever experience that?
There were too many stories. I couldn't even fit them all in the book.
Wow!
That was
that's
problem.
a first.
But I wanted to get. Well, I'm kind of working on another one that will have maybe more stories in it. But I kind of also wanted to get the correlation of some of the theories and ideas, so I had to leave room for that as I was writing and I wanted to get it out. I just wanted to also get it done. So I felt like it was efficient enough to go ahead and complete it and move it on out. But some of the ideas that I had were weird because they were thoughts I've had for years back, when I was doing hypnosis even. There were just some strange things that would come along, and it's like, I wonder what that's about. I wonder what that is. And one of them was a guy came to take one of my hypnosis courses, and he was very well educated. He was a stockbroker by profession, I believe. He was an older man, and most of my students were a little bit younger. And he would, I think I had 12 students in this one class, and I just did the class out of my house. But he came for class, and we were about halfway through. It was a 12-week program. We were maybe class 4, 5, 6, somewhere in that ballpark. But because I had 12 students, I was doing an extra practice night. So he came to the practice sessions on Sunday nights that I had as well. So this one Sunday night, he shows up. He's the only student there. He's the only practice student there. So it was just my husband was there too, and myself and this guy. So he starts talking. He was kind of like hesitant, he just like he didn't really want to tell me, but he kind of wanted to tell me. He had a lot of questions about mind control that I couldn't answer. I was fairly new and at a lot of this. I certainly had not moved into mind control, issues and government mind control or any kind of mind control. It just wasn't on my radar at that particular time of my life. But he starts telling me about he moved back east when he was young, married a woman, had deep pockets money. The family had money. And because the family was involved in this organization, which he would not tell me the name of it, but because he was married to her, they brought him into the fold of this organization and took him up through the levels really fast to the very top. And so at the very top, I guess they do some really odd, strange things, but they program people somehow to be able to receive telepathic messages, to be able to see visual things that they project to them and that sort of thing. Well, they were projecting all this stuff to him, and they kind of got him into this where he could just see these things and know these things and all kinds of stuff. So fast forward, he gets a divorce eventually. He moves back here to my neck of the woods where he was originally from. And he ends up in my hypnosis class. But at this point in time, and he hesitantly tells me that he's still seeing these things. So he's in his home and he sees little aliens in his house. And he sees craft when he walks outside. He sees UFOs, in the sky. And he sees, newspaper headlines that just, pop in his head. And he hears these prophetic messages of something that's going to happen tomorrow in California or whatever. And he's like, I don't want, he wanted it to stop, was what he was telling me.
Right.
But the manner in which that he was telling me, I kind of questioned, does he want me to help him? Because I keep telling him I don't know anything about this mind control stuff. Or is he telling me so I know that this happens? So I wasn't quite sure.
I was just going to say, it sounds like he's still tuned into their channel.
Yeah, exactly. But he leaves that night, and a couple of days later was our regular class time, and I was sick, so I just couldn't teach the class that night. So I asked my husband if he would just call everyone, cancel class. And he did. Well, this guy's phone number was disconnected. He never came back to class. He was like he just disappeared off the planet. I don't know what happened to him. But that was just really weird. But I started thinking about that. Okay, he said you could not tell the difference as if those things were actually real. You couldn't tell the difference. His mind was programmed to see them as if they were actually real. So I have one chapter of the book that talks about possibilities of projections. That where they, and I just, there again, I ask a question, I get an answer sometimes really fast. But I was just watching a show on a YouTube channel the other day, this man who had worked in programs, and he said this goes back all the way to 1960. If they were doing this perfecting this stuff in 1960, no telling what they can do today. But they can just, they can connect with your particular brainwave signature, and we all have one. And they can just project almost anything to your mind, and it will simply be, translated as voice or a visual. Now that's kind of scary.
It is. I almost think. I don't know. Did he say this was like the Freemasons or something, or Illuminati?
He would not say. He would not say what the name of them. I don't know if he's afraid of them or what. I don't know. So he wouldn't say. Yeah, I don't know.
That's scary. I hope he's okay. I hope he's okay. Whatever.
That reminds me of Stephen King's story, Hearts in Atlantis, where Anthony Hopkins' character?
Yeah,
he's able to telepathically receive images. It just comes to his mind, like he shuts down, and he's a part of that project that I think it actually happened in the 60s. And I can't think of the name.
The MK Ultra.
MK Ultra.
MK Ultra.
Yeah. And I think Stephen King mentioned it in the book without really mentioning it, and it just makes me wonder if that is because whenever you were telling that story, that's all I could think about was that story and how he was able to get images and know things, know how a person's feeling. And it just comes to his mind. So that's scary.
Right.
And the fact that he just disappeared.
Yeah.
That's like, because he always said too, if you see people in black coats and, unmarked tag or untagged cars, like with no license plate, they're the boogeyman.
I don't think there's when people, because like people always ask me all the time, because Robert, I wish I could see ghosts, or I wish I could. And I always tell them this, and I'm kind of equating this to this guy's story. If you open this door, most likely you cannot close it.
Nope.
Mm-hmm. And so I feel bad for him because I know he was asking you for help, but there's nothing you could have done for him.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we could have done something with hypnosis, if you can get some of that memory out, and we would have been able to do something. I'm not sure I would have been skilled enough at that time, especially to really work through some of that. Now, later on, I had a lot of people come to me that had gone through these intense business programs where they just conditioned your mind to sell, whatever it is that they're conditioning them to do. And they said, they couldn't get out of it. It was like they were so programmed, they could not alter the script in their mind. They could not alter it. It was like it was just there, and they just felt compelled to do it. So I think there's probably more to like the MK Ultra kind of, they would kind of break down the person, divide their thoughts in their mind, and then they would do things and not even know they were doing it. In this case, these people wanted to be better at sales, or they wanted to be, financially rich or whatever, and so they went into some of these programs, but then it kind of took over, and they didn't want it there. So I think our mind is one of these things that we can get caught up in things, and we sometimes don't have control then. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, that's terrifying.
I wanted to ask you this question. In your UFO time, did you ever do anything? Did you ever research or look into Ingrid Cole at all?
No.
You didn't? Okay. I've always been interested in that story, so
yeah,
I've been intrigued with Ingrid Cole, and I just want to.
Of Ingrid Cole, right?
I don't.
Okay.
No, tell me the story.
He's supposedly he was. See, they don't know whether he's a UFO or someone from the future, but he appeared in West Virginia before the Mothman prophecy stuff happened.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I know the Mothman prophecy. Yeah.
Yeah. So supposedly he was seen like days before like the Mothman was ever seen, and I can't think of the guy's name. Alan Greenspan, I think he wrote up some stories about him, and he's in Stephen Kill's book as well, the Mothman prophecies. And there's a gentleman, I can't think of the guy's name, the guy that saw Ingrid Cole, and they call him the Smiling Man. And so he appeared on the road with this gentleman, and he was wearing clothes that didn't fit the time period. Like he was wearing like a shiny suit, and he looked odd, and his facial features looked very odd and oblonged, and like he was trying to form into a human or something. So it appeared to this gentleman like he was a regular person. So it's just one of those stories that I've always been interested in, because like I know I've done 2 shows on it, and I've just been intrigued with it. So, and so like some people say that he's part of the Men in Black, and then some people say that he's like from the future and is trying to foretell people from seeing like the Mothman and stuff like that. So
Woodrow Derenberger?
Woodrow Derenberger, the land of Lanalos, I think his name is his book. I think
it just shows up that he's the man that.
Yeah, he wrote a book. I have it. I just I don't know where it's at. It's been stored somewhere. But
would you call Andrew Cole a villain, or would you equate? Because I don't know if I told you this. Like, it makes me wonder if he's the same guy that the immortal guy that we did a couple episodes back. I can't think of his name. Saint
Germain.
Saint Germain. It makes me wonder, like, because whenever you talk about him, I'm like, I think it's like almost the same entity. It's almost the same person.
Like he's immortal. And okay. Yeah, I see what you're pointing.
And then the smiling man, the grinning man.
I don't know. I want to do more shows of him, and I've always been interested in him. So I was just wondering because like he's somewhat tied into UFOs, Linda, but not as much. But they say he's from Lanalos, a different planet. I don't know.
Yeah, I have heard of him. I didn't recognize the name, but I have heard that story. I don't know. There is something. There's surveillance of some sort. The Men in Black are definitely real,
right?
In a lot of the cases that I've studied, but also in some personal situations. There have definitely been some surveillance around with some of these things. I had my phone bugged when I first started doing the hypnosis stuff with abductees. I'm not sure why. I mean, it wasn't like I had any information that everybody didn't have, So I'm not sure exactly what they were trying to figure out. And then as I started progressing and becoming more intuitive and then eventually did remote viewing, I mean, there were military guys that would show up and be part of my remote viewing class. I'm not sure if they wanted to know if there was any certain technique I was using, if they wanted to recruit some people from the class, or if they just wanted to see, what we could access.
Linda,
I don't know what they were doing there.
That is,
but they obviously already knew how to remote view. They didn't need the class. That's for sure.
Linda, that's scary.
Yeah.
Yeah, I never felt intimidated by these people.
I'm glad.
That's good, but
yeah,
that alone right there is a little alarming. Like, but I mean, it's not like you're researching out in the field and investigating, like, military bases to find,
Yeah, but I mean, that
no.
obviously with them showing up, they feel that you're a threat or something,
or they just want to know what you know. I think that's what
I think that was it, because there were a lot of questions. Where did you learn how to do this? How, what have you done? There was just tons and tons and tons of questions about me and the class and remote viewing all the way around. But this was long after. This was maybe around 2000. This would have been long after the the Stargate people were doing their stuff, back in the 70s, and then they'd all release books. None of this was secretive, that people could learn to do it. So I'm not sure exactly what their purpose was there. Maybe they just feel like they have to check out everything. I don't know for sure.
Linda, are you a X-Man?
I am not.
Are you sure? That sounds like someone what X-Men would say.
Yeah. Linda, we're coming up on an hour. That's usually the length of our show. How does our viewers, how does the Bigfoot Club viewers find your book and your podcast?
Yeah, I'm just Linda Eastburn YouTube channel, so that's easy to find. The book, you can find it on Amazon. It's Thresholds to Encounters. Linda Eastburn, author. You can find that there. I'm on Facebook. I have a Bigfoot group called Bigfoot Cryptid Midwest. Come join that, and you'll always see everything that I have out there. And I'm getting ready to do some really interesting remote viewing type of classes coming up, helping people to find Bigfoot out in the woods, helping people to find all kinds of things. So that should be also a fun course. It's not put together yet, but if I do, as soon as I put it out, everyone will know if you are a friend of mine on Facebook or part of that group.
Is this going to be like a online class?
We'll have it online, probably some in person too.
Okay,
yeah, probably both.
Exciting. That's exciting.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Okay. Like whenever we get off, I'm going to try to put this out tonight or tomorrow. Send me your links that you want on this podcast, and I'll add it onto the podcast.
Will do.
I really, really enjoyed this session. We got to have you back on. We really do.
Yeah, anytime.
So,
Lots to talk about.
So let's say good night. Good night to everybody. Good night. Thanks for being on. Good night and goodbye.
Goodbye.
Okay. Thanks, Linda.
Thank you.
Okay, bye.